All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive. This time we're taking a look at extended Kalman filters.
PKFs.
PKFs. And to help us out, we've got this YouTube lecture from a university course. It's on SLAM.
Right.
And we've also got a couple of Chinese language sources that go into a bit more detail on some of the applications.
Yeah.
And this is going to be a really interesting one, I think, because, Kalman filters, EKFs, they sound kind of technical, but they're actually, they're really fundamental to a lot of the tech that we, rely on every day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's, at its core, it's all about this idea of state estimation.
Okay.
So, like, imagine you've got a robot, right? And it's, trying to navigate a room.
Right.
And it's got, it's got sensors, but those sensors are, they're noisy, they're imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
The EKF is kind of like, it's like the robot's brain, right? It's like, it's trying to figure out, well, given this kind of like, noisy, imperfect information from my sensors, what's the most likely, state of the world?
Uh-huh. So it's like the robot is trying to put together a puzzle, but some of the pieces are missing. Some of the pieces are, have blurry edges or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And, the basic Kalman filter, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes this assumption that everything's kind of behaving in this, nice, neat, linear way.
Right.
Like a straight line.
Yeah.
But the world's rarely that simple.
Right. And, the lecture, used an example of even something as simple as a robot turning can throw a wrench into things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because suddenly you're not dealing with linear motion, you're dealing with angles.
Right. You got those like cosine functions and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the extended Kalman filter kind of comes in. It's designed to handle those situations where things get a little bit curvy.
Right.
And the lecture, I thought this was a really cool way to visualize it.
Yeah.
They were talking about, imagine like a nice smooth bell curve.
Right.
Like a Gaussian distribution,
mm-hmm.
That classic kind of statistical shape.
Yeah.
And they said, well, imagine you take that nice smooth bell curve
mm-hmm.
and you pass it through a nonlinear function.
Okay.
Like, like one of those cosine functions we were just talking about.
Right.
Suddenly it gets all warped and distorted. It's not Gaussian anymore.
Ah, I see.
And that's a problem for the standard Kalman filter.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting to see the challenge here. So how does the EKF, deal with this? The lecture talked about linearization, but, I have to admit that sounded a little bit like magic to me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a clever trick. Basically what they do is instead of trying to deal with the whole curve, like the whole nonlinear function, they kind of zoom in
mm-hmm.
on a specific point.
Okay.
And they say, all right, we're just going to approximate this little section of the curve.
Right.
With a straight line.
So it's like ironing out a wrinkle in the curve, but only in this one little spot.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
But how do you choose that spot? It seems like you need to know where you are to do that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But that's what the robot is trying to figure out.
Right, right. So what they do is they use the robot's current best estimate of its state as the starting point.
Okay.
And then they linearize around that point.
All right. So it's like saying, okay, we know we're roughly here.
Yeah.
So let's just pretend that everything's linear.
Right.
In this little, space around us.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a local approximation.
Okay. That makes sense. The lecture also mentions something called Jacobian matrices. Is that where things start to get, really hairy?
Well, they might sound intimidating.
Yeah.
But Jacobian matrices are, they're just a handy way to organize all the math involved in linearization.
Okay.
Think about it this way. Imagine our robot is turning.
Right.
And, there's some relationship between how much the steering wheel turns
mm-hmm.
and how the robot's position changes.
Right.
And that relationship's going to be all curvy and nonlinear, right?
Right.
The Jacobian matrix basically helps us capture, how a small change in the steering angle translates to a change in the robot's position.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that whole relationship is curved,
right.
the Jacobian lets us kind of approximate it with a straight line for a small change.
I see. So the Jacobian matrix is like it's like a translator helping us bridge that gap between the curved reality and the linear world that the Kalman filter likes to live in.
Exactly. And that kind of brings us to like the heart of the EKF algorithm. And, it still follows the same basic kind of 2 key steps as the standard Kalman filter.
Right. The lecture mentioned those. So it's prediction and correction. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So in the prediction step, it's like the robot is saying, okay, well, based on what I know about how I move, this is where I think I'm going to be next.
Exactly. Yeah. But now, thanks to that Jacobian matrix,
right,
we can make that prediction even when the robot's movements are nonlinear.
Okay.
So we're essentially using our linearized model to kind of estimate that next state.
Gotcha. And then the correction step is where the robot's sensors come into play. It's like, hold on, my sensors are telling me something a little bit different. Let me, adjust my prediction based on what I'm actually seeing out in the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So the EKF compares that, the predicted state.
Right.
To those sensor measurements, and it takes into account the uncertainty of both.
Okay.
And then it kind of combines them.
Okay.
To get this more accurate estimate.
And that's where that magic term Kalman gain comes in.
You got it. Yeah.
All right. I think we need to dive into that in part 2.
Let's do it.
So the Kalman gain, it's kind of like a judge, right?
Yeah.
It's weighing the evidence from the prediction and the evidence from the sensors.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's deciding how much to trust each one. Like if the sensors are really noisy,
right,
it might give more weight to the prediction.
Okay.
But if the prediction's kind of off, it might give more weight to the sensors.
Okay.
And throughout this whole process, the EKF is also keeping track of how certain it is about its estimate.
Okay.
And that's where those covariance matrices come in.
The lecture mentioned those, but I gotta be honest, those went a little over my head. What are those in plain English?
So imagine you've got this bubble of uncertainty, right, around the robot.
Right.
And the bigger the bubble, the less sure we are about the robot's true state.
Right.
The covariance matrix is basically a way to describe the shape and size of that bubble.
I see. So it's like with each prediction and correction step, the EKF is trying to shrink that bubble.
Exactly, yeah.
Get more and more confident about where it thinks it is.
Yeah. It updates that covariance matrix based on the linearized models and the Kalman gain.
Okay.
So that, that those uncertainty estimates are as accurate as possible. Now, the lecture really focused on robot localization as kind of the example.
Yeah.
But those Chinese language sources you mentioned, they really highlighted some other fascinating applications of this stuff.
Yeah, they really opened my eyes to how versatile EKFs are.
Yeah.
One that really stuck out to me was sensor fusion. It's like, you've got a robot and it's got all these different sensors. It's got cameras, it's got LiDAR, it's got inertial sensors.
Right.
And somehow it needs to take all that information and combine it into a coherent picture of the world.
Exactly, yeah. It's like having a team of experts.
Right.
Right. Each one with their own kind of specialized knowledge. And the EKF is kind of like the moderator.
Right.
Weighing the opinions of each sensor based on its reliability, and then kind of synthesizing all that information into this unified estimate.
So it's not just about trusting one sensor over the other.
Right.
It's about finding a way to make them all work together.
Exactly. Yeah. And this approach is it's incredibly powerful. I mean, think about GPS navigation.
Oh yeah.
Your phone is using an EKF to combine data from satellites, from cell towers, even from your phone's motion sensors, to try to figure out where you are.
And to do it accurately, even when you're in like a city with tall buildings or something.
Exactly, yeah. Challenging environments.
Yeah. It's amazing to think that something that we use every day, like GPS, relies on this really sophisticated math.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's not just navigation either. I mean, those Chinese sources, we're talking about applications in object tracking, predictive maintenance, even economic forecasting.
Yeah, really, really wide range of applications.
That's pretty amazing, yeah. I mean, as long as you can define like a motion model, an observation model, and you can handle the non-linearity involved.
Right.
You can use this stuff.
It's like a secret weapon.
Yeah.
For dealing with uncertain data and dynamic systems.
Exactly. It's a really powerful tool. Now, I'm kind of curious, how did this all come about?
Yeah.
The lecture briefly mentioned this guy Rudolf E. Kalman.
Yep.
But I'd love to hear a little more about the history of this whole thing.
Well, it's a pretty fascinating story, actually. So Kalman was this electrical engineer and mathematician.
Okay.
And he was working on control systems, signal processing back in the 1950s.
Wow.
And, he was really grappling with this problem of how do you estimate the state of a system based on noisy measurements.
Yeah.
And his breakthrough was to come up with this recursive algorithm that could do that really efficiently and accurately.
I see. So that was kind of the birth of the Kalman filter.
Yeah, exactly. And get this, the Kalman filter actually played a key role in the Apollo program.
Oh, wow.
They used it to help guide those lunar missions.
Really?
Yeah, it was estimating the spacecraft's trajectory, its position, all that stuff with incredible precision.
That's amazing.
So it's a real testament to the enduring power of this mathematical framework.
Absolutely. It's pretty inspiring to see how one idea can have such a profound impact.
Yeah, definitely. So for our listeners out there who are, maybe feeling inspired and want to delve a little deeper into this world, where would you point them? What resources would you recommend?
Well, if you're looking for a really solid foundation, Probabilistic Robotics is an excellent book.
Okay.
It covers Kalman filters, EKFs, a lot of detail. With a focus on robotic applications.
Right.
But there's also, countless online resources out there.
Right.
Tutorials, blog posts, open source code libraries.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff to help you get started.
And there's a really vibrant research community.
Oh, yeah.
That's constantly, pushing the boundaries of this stuff.
Absolutely. It's a really dynamic field.
Yeah.
Lots of opportunities to explore.
It's like we've given our listeners, a new set of lenses to view the world with, a way to understand the hidden workings of these complex systems and algorithms.
Exactly, and to me that's the real magic of the EKF. It's like it unlocks this deeper understanding of the world around us.
Yeah, it's about making the seemingly complex a little less mysterious.
Absolutely,
a little more accessible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we've given our listeners the superpower, the ability to kind of see the world through the eyes of a robot.
Yeah.
Or a GPS system.
Right.
To understand how these systems are taking, this noisy, imperfect data and turning it into useful information.
And that's a valuable skill even if you're not, building robots or designing navigation systems.
Right.
I mean, these principles of state estimation, of prediction, correction, uncertainty, they apply in so many areas of life.
I'm thinking about how we make decisions every day based on incomplete information. Whether it's choosing a route through traffic or predicting the stock market.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to estimate the state of a system, weigh the evidence, adjust our course as new data comes in.
It's like we're all running our own little internal Kalman filters, right?
Yeah.
Trying to make sense of the world.
Exactly. But even with the most sophisticated techniques, there are always challenges.
Right.
And the lecture and the Chinese language sources, they did mention some of the limitations of EKF.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're not a magic bullet.
Right. So what are some of the things that can trip them up?
Well, one key factor is the initial conditions.
Oh, okay.
Remember how we were talking about using the robot's current best estimate as the starting point for linearization?
Right.
If that initial estimate's way off, the whole process can go astray.
Yeah.
It's like trying to navigate a maze, but starting from the wrong entrance.
Right. Right. So it's all about having a decent starting point.
Yeah.
A rough idea of where you are in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just the initial state estimate either.
Okay.
I mean, the accuracy of the motion and observation models, that's crucial too. If those models don't reflect reality well, the EKF's performance is going to suffer.
So it's like using a faulty map to guide your journey.
Exactly. Yeah. You need a good map. You need a decent starting point.
Right. But even then, there are other things that can throw a wrench into the works.
Right.
The lecture touched on this assumption of Gaussian distributions.
Yeah.
What happens when the noise in the system doesn't follow that nice bell-shaped curve.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, in the real world, noise can be really messy and unpredictable.
Right.
And if it deviates significantly from a Gaussian distribution, the EKS estimates might become less reliable.
So it's like the EKF kind of has its comfort zone.
Yeah.
And when things get too chaotic, too unpredictable,
right,
it starts to struggle.
That's a good analogy, yeah. But the cool thing is there's always room for improvement.
Right.
I mean, researchers are constantly developing new techniques to handle non-Gaussian noise, to make EKFs more robust in these challenging situations.
So it's like the field itself is a dynamic system.
Yeah.
Constantly evolving and adapting.
Exactly, yeah. It's always pushing forward. So, for our listener out there who's now armed with all this knowledge about EKFs, what's the one big takeaway? What's the question they should be pondering as they step back out into the real world?
That's a great question.
We've talked a lot about estimating the state of physical systems,
right?
Like robots, spacecraft. But what about estimating the state of something less tangible, like public opinion,
right?
Or the health of an ecosystem.
Yeah.
How can we apply these principles of state estimation
right,
to gain insights into these these really complex dynamic systems?
That's a fantastic question. It really it expands the scope of what we've been talking about. It's like we've opened a door to a whole new way of thinking about the world.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the power of understanding these fundamental concepts. They give you this framework for approaching problems in all sorts of different fields.
So as our listener is out there in the world encountering these complex systems, these processes, they can now ask themselves, how is the state of the system being estimated? What are the models? What are the assumptions? And how can I use this knowledge to gain a deeper understanding?
Exactly, yeah. They've got a new set of tools, a new perspective on the world. And that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our exploration of extended Kalman filters.
Yeah.
It's been a journey through some pretty technical territory, but hopefully it's left our listener with a sense of wonder and a thirst for more knowledge.
Absolutely.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
Likewise.
And remember, this is just the beginning. The world is full of fascinating systems and algorithms just waiting to be explored. So keep that curiosity alive and never stop learning.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Until next time.
Yeah.